Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Vintage Sewing Machine Garage. You are looking at this magnificent Neki sewing table that my Neki BU mirror is sitting in. You guys have seen this table in earlier videos, but I'm showing it to you now because I wanted to talk to you about what I decided. I was exploring the possibility of refinishing the top of this desk. This desk, I got it from a space where the original owner had left it. And I don't know if the original owner, maybe they had to move or maybe they passed away. But anyway, it was left in a building and it was being sold. And I don't know if you guys remember, if you've seen the other videos on it, this table was beautifully preserved except for the top. And the top, the machine was folded down, so the machine wasn't harmed, but the top had sort of not just scratches, but gouging in the top surface here, mostly over on this side and a little bit on the filler piece. And given how well people are known to take care of things when they are the original purchaser, I really doubt that the original owner did this. I just cannot imagine anyone having spent so much money on this when it was new to have treated it this way. And it's been my experience that virtually every machine that I get from the original owner is beautifully preserved. Yeah, there's some patina and some wear, but nothing abused, because I have found that most of the time when you see something that's been mishandled or neglected, it's usually not the original owner that did it. It might be, someone they bequeath it to, or maybe they, someone else had it. If you were the original purchaser and you had spent what they spent on this table and machine, you would take care of it. Because they would have known, the original owner would have known how incredibly costly it was back in 1953. So when I first was talking about this table, it looked like it might be something I was going to have to refinish, not the rest of the table. The rest of it's gorgeous, just the top. And so I decided to conduct an experiment, which was to see if these gouges, when I went in, if I could try to apply the restore finish here. And this is not a commercial. I just bought these in an antique store like the rest of you might. I have no connection to the Howard Company or anyone else for that matter. Here you see Zinsser Bullseye Shellac. These are different. Let's set the wax aside for a moment. With the shellac or the restore finish, you can experiment with trying to fill in a scratch or a gouge and see what happens. Sometimes when you take something like restore finish, it will blend in the scratches, and it's one of my favorite products, honest to God. But occasionally, if the finish, and by the finish I mean the varnish or the shellac or the lacquer, whatever it was sealed with, if it's very thin, a lot of times restore finish can actually seep through and end up giving you dark. Instead of having a light colored gouge on this is like a cherry colored finish, you end up with dark gouges and they look like scars, and it doesn't look really great. So one thing you can do, let's say you're in this position, it's like, geez, I don't know, do I really want to refinish this? First thing to consider is this layer of wood or veneer is about 3/16 of an inch thick. So if I start sanding it, some of these gouges could be deep. I'm really taking a chance that I'm going to sand all the way through it. And I didn't want to do that. And I thought, well, let me try this first. So let me show you guys a couple of things you can do when you're in that you're trying to decide, gosh, I want it to look better. It's kind of rough looking, but I don't really want to refinish it if I don't have to, because that is a heck of a project. If you're going to refinish furniture, you're going to do it properly, you need to be prepared to work really hard for a long time. And it's quite something to take on. And you may want to, but just, word to the wise, try to see what you can do to conserve what's here before stripping down and trying to go back. And stain colors are notorious for being difficult to match. So, a couple of ideas. You can take, I'm going to see if I can zoom in here, let you guys see. I don't know if they'll pick up very well here, but there's some gouges. Fortunately, they don't look too terrible. Here we go. I moved the camera. Maybe you guys can get a better idea. You can even see some of the indentations. When I started, these were very light colored, and I was worried that it had gone all the way to the wood, and I was going to have to basically grind all of this down and try to get it color matched with a stain. But before I did that, I said, let me try one thing. Now, you have a couple of options. You can do this with a cotton swab, or you can even take an artist brush. There's a whole pack of them. I got this at one of the craft stores. These are not totally horrible brushes that, that come included with cheap, kids' paint sets. They're not fine, right? If you're a professional artist, you would probably use a brush that's a little more quality than this. But these are good. Typically, I have not had a problem with these, shedding. They've been fine for what I use them for. So what I did was I took some of the Restore finish, right? Just put a little bit on the end of the brush, and I took one end of one of these gouges. You can see this one here. And I simply took a little bit of the Restore finish and just put it on there to see what it would do. And then I took my rag, this is an old pillowcase, and I wiped it. And I was very relieved to see that it was actually helping to camouflage the color difference, but it didn't darken. What that says to me is this finish on the top seems different than the finish on the rest of the table, because when I look at the, again, whether this is lacquer or shellac, whatever they use down here is different than up here. It's also possible that maybe someone actually added varnish on top of this at one point. I don't know. But I can tell you that compared to what this used to look like now, I went with the Restore finish. I have the shellac here. You can also take, sometimes if you've got wood, let's say I tried this and it got too dark, you can go in and try to seal scratches with just use one little brushing of shellac in there. That helps to semi-seal the wood, but it leaves a little bit of porosity for the Restore finish or something similar to absorb. But I didn't even have to use the shellac, but I had it, on the ready. What else can you do when you're trying to camouflage things that show up on a piece of furniture when you're really not wanting to do an actual refinishing? So there are other options you might have. Now, if you notice on this edge here, this looks, something got worn here. I'm not even sure why it would, but anyway, some of the original color was worn away. You may have seen these in hardware stores. You can get these in a number of places. These are wood-toned markers, and they're used for touch-up. They're not cheap. They're not like buying, craft markers. But they come in different colors. These are the three I have left in this original set, and there are different brands. You can experiment. These are solvent markers. They have that strong smell like a Sharpie does, but I have found that they can work well depending on how much of the varnish is left, because the varnish is going to seal the wood. So let's take a look here, if I can get the cap off. And you always want to seal these because they'll go dry on you really fast. So notice, I'm just going to go here in some strokes. And in this particular instance, I'm seeing a little bit of a color tone change. Nothing dramatic, but maybe we don't really want dramatic here, right? Sometimes you will try these markers and they don't do squat. You're thinking, hey, what that tells you, or what it should tell you, is that that there's enough varnish on there that the markers are not going to be able to do much. But you know what? Wood tones are interesting because it's kind of a subtle thing. So I was able to fill this in. I can come over here and do this little section. It's not perfect, but you may find it works perfect. Sometimes I've used these and they totally hide a scratch. And the problem is not the marker so much as it is, again, how much old varnish is sealing that wood and preventing. You may have, if you have totally bare wood, this can actually go darker on you and it'll show up more. So I'm actually just fortunate that, again, what am I doing with this? I'm basically just trying to blend in a light area. so that it's less apparent. And I'm happy with this. You can always go back if you think it's not dark enough, you know, let it dry a little bit. It shouldn't take too long, and then come back with another, you know, another shot at it here. But this is fine. This is actually better than it was. And what else to say? The last thing you want to think about is putting a furniture polish on. Now, polishes are interesting. They don't work on wood laminates. There are people who've tried. I'm not sure why, but they don't work on that. And if you have furniture or some piece of wood that has a thick polyurethane finish, it may or may not help it, because the polyurethanes they're very different than the old school lacquer finishes that were put on furniture. A lot of this furniture was, of course, produced in a factory, and they would use very high solvent-based lacquers, cellulose lacquers, to seal varnishes in, and they did as a varnish, excuse me, to seal the wood. And they did this because they would dry quickly, and again, they're on an assembly line. You know, you're in a plant making furniture. This one, of course, you can see has the two-tone. This would have been one of the, if not the most expensive sewing table you could buy in 1953 with this necky. And I've talked about the tables before in other videos, but I want you guys to see this. But when you have furniture that's either sealed with a lacquer or a shellac of some sort, then furniture polish, this is called feed and wax, but this is just, you know, one brand. There's a lot of brands of furniture polish out there. But one of the things that it's useful for is helping to prevent the wood from drying out. Wood has natural oils in it, and as it ages over many, many years, it can get dry and brittle. And if you've ever had veneers pop off, you know, they almost feel very, very brittle, like a potato chip, because they haven't been fed, thus the name that they put on this bottle here. So what would I do? I will simply take the feed and wax, put some on here, and simply rub it in, you know, and I'll simply rub it. Just to give you an example, I'm not going to have you guys sit through a video of me waxing this whole table. That would be good for insomnia, perhaps, but anyway, make sure you shake it up, because these things typically separate. So now I'm going to come here and I'm going to go across the area that I touched up. And again, it was a marker, so I don't really need to give it that much drying time, or at least I don't think so. Now, once you've done that, follow the directions on whatever furniture polish you have. Come back, this is the dry side, right? And just kind of, you know, get any of the excess off, okay? And again, what you're doing is you're trying to preserve and conserve. One of my earlier video subscribers or watchers, you know, is trying to use a word other than restoration. And you can get into the weeds when you're talking about, well, what is a restoration? What is it? When you're conserving, instead of, you know, sanding it all down and trying to make it look new again, which would be very difficult to replicate what they've done here, conserving means basically you're tidying up, you're cleaning, you're repairing, you know, pieces of wood that might be broken or veneered if you can. Replace parts of the veneer, and then you're going to go in and try to even out color splotches, put some of this polish on, and that's it. That's essentially it. One last thing to mention to you guys is when you are getting ready to polish or put anything on furniture, even the Restore Finish product I talked to you guys about, be sure, a lot of times furniture will have areas where dust collects, you know, the little crannies and the grooves here. What you want to do is make sure, you can do this with a vacuum, or you can even just take a small brush. Make sure that you get any dust or you know, grit, you know, all kinds of stuff will settle on furniture if you're not cleaning it regularly. Make sure you remove this before putting anything on there, even a damp rag. If you add dampness to dust, you can get mold and mildew. This table has none, but just as a precaution, I went in and, like I say, I vacuumed. You'll see more of it down below, right? You typically see more down here where you get more dust, but you can get it anywhere in the furniture. Anyway, make sure your furniture is good and clean and free of dust before you put on any polishes. So there you have it, guys. This is my video basically showing you how to let's say you get a sewing table. It's going to be in your home and you're like, gosh, you know, it's kind of looking kind of rough. You can bring them back. You guys have seen me demonstrate using things like Restore Finish, and again, it comes in many colors. This is cherry, but they come in all sorts of different colors, and you will find that if you take something that's vintage and you conserve it, you kind of clean it up and, you know, bring it back as best you can without totally just stripping it down and trying to reinvent it. It's going to be very hard. It's and you know, whether you like to see some of the patina, you know, some of the little wear areas, I find those beautiful, but not everyone does. You may say, well, I don't like that. And that's fine, because that's subjective. No one should ever tell you what looks beautiful to you. I certainly would never dare to try that. But to my eye, this doesn't bother me, right? It does not bother me to see, you know, is this exactly like it was in the showroom? No, but it's close enough, right? I blended the color, and again, I was very lucky over here. And I just moved the camera, you guys can see. I was very lucky. I was really worried that these gouges were going to either go really dark and look like scars, or they were going to, I was going to have to grind all this down. And I always prefer not to do that unless I absolutely have to. I did get a sewing table one time. I was out in the country on a summer day, and I got a 201, Singer 201, and you guys know how passionate I am about those machines. And the table had been stored in someone's shed, and it had been out there for years. The machine was restorable, and I bought the machine, but I had to throw that table away because the whole thing had come apart. It was literally just falling apart. All the veneer was gone. But that was like one table in a lot of years of doing this. Most of these tables can be brought back to where hopefully you'll find it acceptable to have it in your home. They require vacuuming, cleaning. Sometimes you get rid of some mold or mildew. But usually they are not that bad. And so again, just thought I would show this to you guys. I'm very pleased to let this patina sit. I was not interested in having really high contrast, light colored gouging, which is what this table had. And I suspect it was not the original owner that did it. But thanks for watching, folks. I appreciate it. By the way, if you see this Neki Biumira listed, I have decided to list it for sale. In fact, it is listed for sale. And the reason is I have gotten another table and machine, and I have to make room for them. I don't have enough room to hold on to everything I want. So anyway, this one will be listed with the table. It is listed with the table. And if you are in the greater Toronto area and you would like to see it and possibly sew on it or purchase it, just let me know. Thanks for watching, guys. I so appreciate it. If you have anything to share on how you have taken a sewing table and spruced it up, or maybe some of you, you have different ideas about what that means. What would you do, and how much effort would you put into a sewing table? Because I've talked often about how incredibly well made they are. These were not cheap tables, and they were built like tanks, and they needed to be, because they had to be strong enough to hold a machine like this, which is pretty much a tank all on its own. Thanks for watching, guys.